Centuries ago, the birth of a royal heir wasn't just a family celebration. It was a matter of national survival. These children were raised to lead armies, negotiate alliances, and secure dynasties. Every step of their upbringing was designed to prepare them for the throne. But what if that child was born different? What if they struggled to walk or speak clearly, or found learning more challenging than expected? In royal courts, where power and perfection were everything, this was seen as more than a personal difficulty. It was a threat. Throughout history, some royal children who showed signs of what we now know as Down syndrome were quietly hidden away. Their names were often erased from records, and the public was sometimes told they had died young when in reality they were simply kept out of sight. Why? Because monarchies relied on a flawless image. Any sign of vulnerability could be seen as weakness by rivals. And so these children, born into privilege, often lived lives of isolation and secrecy. This is the forgotten story of those royal heirs. The children whose very existence changed the destiny of kingdoms even as they were hidden from the world. Down syndrome is a genetic condition that happens when a person is born with an extra chromosome. Most people have 46 chromosomes, but those with Down syndrome have 47. That extra copy of chromosome 21 changes how the body and brain develop, creating differences in learning, muscle tone, and physical appearance. Individuals with Down syndrome often have unique features like almond-shaped eyes, a slightly flatter face, smaller ears, and sometimes a single crease across the palm. They may also face health challenges such as heart conditions or developmental delays. Today, we understand that people with Down syndrome can live full, happy, and meaningful lives. But centuries ago, when the world knew nothing of genetics, these differences were deeply misunderstood. Many believed they were curses from above, signs of weak bloodlines, or evidence of failure within a family. And in royal households, where every heir was expected to appear flawless, having a child with such differences was often considered an unbearable scandal. In 1919, Nerissa Boza's Lion was born, followed by her younger sister, Catherine, in 1926. As first cousins of Queen Elizabeth II, they were part of the extended British royal family, but from an early age, it was clear that both sisters had significant intellectual disabilities, and historians believe one or both may have had Down syndrome or a similar condition. Instead of being raised within the royal household, the family made a decision that would shape the rest of their lives. The sisters were sent to the Royal Oldswood Hospital in Surrey, a long-term institution for people with disabilities. From that moment, Nissa and Catherine seemed to vanish. In a startling twist, official family records actually listed the sisters as deceased, even though they were alive and living quietly at Earswood. Nerissa would remain there until her death in 1986, while Catherine lived in the institution for nearly her entire life, passing away in 2014. The Sisters reportedly received very few visits from their relatives, and for decades the outside world had no idea who they were or that they were members of the royal family. Their existence was only revealed in the 1980s when journalists uncovered the truth, sparking shock and outrage across Britain. This story is a powerful reminder that even as late as the 20th century, royal families often chose secrecy over support when it came to relatives with disabilities. For many, the fear of public scandal still outweighed compassion. Princess Alexandrine of Prussia was born in 1915, the beloved daughter of Crown Prince Wilhelm of Prussia. She was diagnosed with Down syndrome, though at the time the condition was not widely understood or even commonly named. Unlike many others in similar situations, Alexandrine's parents chose not to send her away. She remained with her family and was even seen in public on rare occasions. Some family photographs and commemorative postcards show her smiling among her relatives, a small but significant sign of acceptance. But life for Alexandrine was still shaped by the social attitudes of her era. She was kept away from royal duties and public appearances as much as possible. She attended a special school and lived a quiet, sheltered life within her family's care. Always loved but carefully hidden from the scrutiny that came with royal status. Princess Alexandrine lived into adulthood, passing away in 1980. Though her life was more comfortable than others with similar conditions, her story reflects a common belief among royals of the time. A child with disabilities could be cherished behind closed doors, but they were never to be part of the monarchy's public image. And de Gaulle was born in 1928 to Charles de Gaulle, who would later become President of France, and his wife Yvonne. Though not part of a royal family, Anne belonged to one of Europe's most influential households. She was born with Down syndrome, a condition that at the time was rarely spoken about openly. Unlike many children with similar diagnoses during that era, Anne was lovingly raised at home rather than placed in an institution. She was deeply adored by her parents, and it was said that child de Gaulle shared an especially close and gentle bond with his youngest daughter. Even so, Anne's life was mostly private. Her condition was not publicly discussed, and she seldom appeared at official events, reflecting the social attitudes of the time. Tragically, Anne passed away at just 20 years old from pneumonia, a loss that left her family heartbroken. In her memory, Yvonne de Gaulle founded the Foundation and de Gaulle, a hospital dedicated to the care of children with disabilities. Anne's story stands out as a rare example of unconditional love and inclusion during a period when such compassion was uncommon, though it still reveals the pressures faced by prominent families of the time. In medieval and early modern times, life was often far harsher for children born with visible differences or intellectual disabilities. Historical accounts suggest that many of these children were quietly sent away, abandoned, hidden on distant estates, or placed in monasteries and convents where they would live out their lives far from the public eye. For royal families, the stakes were even higher. Monarchies depended on an image of divine favor and flawless bloodlines. A child perceived as imperfect could be viewed as a direct threat to the throne's stability. Some historians even believe that infants with severe disabilities were sometimes killed shortly after birth, though proof is scarce. These actions, if they occurred, were carefully hidden from the record. This culture of secrecy and shame was not limited to any one monarchy. Across Europe and beyond, royal households relied as much on image and myth as they did on military strength. Acknowledging that a royal heir had a disability was seen as unthinkable. The cost of this obsession with perfection was devastating. Countless children were denied love, family, and acceptance, erased from history simply because they didn't fit the era's narrow definition of what a royal child should be. Today, the world is a far more accepting and supportive place. People with Down syndrome now have access to education, quality health care, and social networks that allow them to lead long, fulfilling lives. They attend school, pursue careers, form meaningful relationships, and contribute greatly to their communities. Many act, teach, excel in sports, run businesses, and inspire others through their talents and resilience. Most importantly, they are recognized, valued, and openly loved for who they are. But it's important to remember that this progress is extremely recent when viewed through the long lens of history. Only a few generations ago, the reality was heartbreakingly different. The lives of Nerissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyon, Princess Alexandrian of Prussia, and Andole, are vivid reminders that not so long ago, children born with Down syndrome, even those born into great privilege and influence, were often kept hidden, locked away, and denied the chance to experience a full life. These children were frequently denied the affection, opportunities, and recognition that their siblings received. To many royal households, their very existence was considered an embarrassment, a blemish on the family lineage, or even a sign of divine displeasure. Their names and faces were often deliberately removed from family records, their lives quietly erased from public knowledge out of fear of judgment and scandal. For decades, countless children lived in heartbreaking isolation. Some were placed in bleak, overcrowded institutions where visits from family were rare or non-existent. Others were sent away to distant estates or confined to monasteries far from the curious eyes of the court and the public. Their lives unfolded in the shadows, lives that official history never intended to preserve. Yet the fact that their stories were hidden does not make them any less important.